Minnesota on the same day.
All my emotion came out at one time. Was it the right way to do it? No. But I can't control that when I'm out there competing. Like, that's my love of the game. That's raw me. Me at my finest, me at my purest. That's what you're going to get inside the lines. I think that I was honest. Was I brutally honest? Yes. But I think that that's the problem. Everybody's so scared to be honest with one another. If you didn't like the way that I handled myself in practice, one of the players come up to me. Somebody say something. Anybody. I'm not going to take it offense. It's not personal. Jimmy, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, you probably right. I would have said, I ain't hooped in I don't know how long. I mean, I'm passionate about it. I love the game, and I love to win. And that's all I was out there doing, was competing.
All right, what'd you think about all this, Nick?
All right, so this is one of the, I think, coolest stories in recent NBA off seasons because it was premeditated and it involves such a high degree of difficulty. And here's what I mean. Jimmy Butler's folks called Rachel Nichols the night before last and said, come to Minneapolis, he's ready to talk. And Jimmy Butler then decided, I'm going to have this big interview coming. I'm going to show up to practice. All that's premeditated, right? But then he has to go execute what he executed at practice, which was reportedly show up to practice late, grab 4 third-string guys, and say, it's me and these 4 guys against Big Cat, against Wiggs, against any of the other starters. Let's see who's got it. And he never lost a game. And that's what added to the interview with Rachel Nichols. That's what added to him being able to say, you bleeping need me, you can't win without me. His entire issue with the Minnesota Timberwolves is not Tibbs, it's not the role players, it's that he said in the interview, Karl-Anthony Towns is the most talented player on the team. Andrew Wiggins is the most God-gifted player on the team. But who plays the hardest? Me. And he wanted to get that message out there. He wanted to remind everyone how good he is, but he had to go win those games at practice in the middle of that premeditation, and he did it. Now, I don't know if this helps him get traded, because I know Tom Thibodeau well enough to know Tom Thibodeau watched that and said, oh my God, I've never loved you more, Jimmy Butler. Your competitive ferocity, how good you still are. But I mean, this was all part of his PR campaign, if you will, to remind the world who he is, and I think it was, at least to this point, relatively successful.
Yeah, Jenna, I wouldn't let him back in the gym. I wouldn't have him around the players. I'll move him immediately. I wouldn't have him, because I made a choice. I made a choice that I'm going with Wiggins. I made a choice that I'm going with Karl-Anthony Towns, and I'm getting ready to support him. And I'm not getting ready to let someone come into my basketball practice, because I know people think it's sport, but you know, it's a job. Could you imagine having someone like that in your office? Could you imagine, like, to make everyone else comfortable? So I don't laugh and stuff about it, because somebody can get hurt. And there's a difference between, you couldn't have no football player out there doing that. You could have a basketball player, because you couldn't have no football player challenge a guy like that, because they would be fisticuffs. They out there talking. Jimmy was the only one serious. And Karl-Anthony Towns is not that guy. Wiggins is not that guy. And if you care about them as a team, and you're trying to be a playoff contender this year, you got to move Jimmy Butler. I wouldn't let him back in the building one more day. All right, I'll be on the phone all day. I would move him, because you cannot have that type of environment at your job and think that people are going to get better. No one's going to get better. Did he prove a point? Yeah, he proved a point. But we got to get him out of here. We have chose we're going a different direction. He is no longer needed to be at the building. I'm going to support the players who I've made an investment in. You want to be moved, as Denny Green told me? Come to my office, and I'm getting ready to accommodate you. And that's what they should do with Jimmy Butler as soon as possible.
That was my take this morning, that this guy was now suddenly going to be, as talented as he is, and wherever his heart and his intentions are, a cancer in that locker room. Why do you want to be with someone who you know doesn't want to be there, will play on his time, when he wants to play, around the people he wants to play with? I just don't understand how you can set up a successful game plan or a successful season with a guy who doesn't want to be there.
I reject your premise that he's going to play on his time when he wants to be there. He said he's coming back to practice today.
No. We know Jimmy Butler. He's one of the hardest workers. This is the kind of guy, he made himself into a player. But you can't go into the season, so you're right about this. Like, they can't move forward with the guy acting like this. No. because it does mess up the team.
But this is how, hold on. This is how Jimmy, I talked to someone that was there yesterday. This is how Jimmy Butler practiced in Chicago. Like, he's always wolfing. He's always yelling. He's always trying to win every drill. And that, by the way, grates on some guys.
Let me tell you something. When you are the best player or you have the most experience, you know what you do to people like Cat and them? You don't tell them the whole truth. You don't tell them things are going to crush them. You don't tell them things that they're going to make their game worse. Like, you tell them things to try to build them up. Now, is there a fine line there? Yes. But Jimmy Butler was not trying to help these players get better. He's trying to take their spirit and crush them. And once it becomes to that, it is counterproductive. Competition is one thing. Combative, that's another thing. And that's what that was yesterday. That wasn't about competition. And that's the reason why none of the other players came up and said anything to him. Why? Because they knew it wasn't about basketball. It was about other things.
And so if this was how he was going to be at every practice moving forward, at every drill, if he was always just going to be trying to demean Big Cat and Wiggins, then maybe I would be on your guys' side of this. But I do want people to understand where Jimmy Butler's mindset is, where he was a year ago when he was super excited to be traded to Minnesota. A year ago. You know that GM survey we just did? Mm-hmm. You know who won which player you'd most want to start your franchise with? Not Anthony Davis, not Giannis, not LeBron, not Durant. Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns. Kentucky, #1 overall pick. Wiggins, Kansas, #1 overall pick. Jimmy Butler, junior college, Marquette, 30th pick. And he gets to Minnesota, and he sees both of these guys who were supposed to be like this. Karl kind of leveled off, and Wiggins dipped enormously. Now, some of that can fall on him. He's got the veteran leader. He needs to lift guys up. Some of it can fall on him. But if you're two guys on max contracts in this league, your own basketball destiny has to be your own prerogative. And so I think Jimmy Butler would like, if he's going to be on the team, those guys to be better. I think he wants what's best for them if he's going to be there. And him showing up to practice yesterday opened the door that he will be there. You said if it were football, but he knows it's not football. I agree with you. You can't do this in an NFL practice.
I was just giving the people an example of why these things happen at a basketball practice compared to football.
Right, but it's not. My point is, you say all the time, football, there's not a lot of tough guys in the NBA.
There's not.
Right,
And yesterday was a great example of it. Because who would let someone carry on like that? Like, who would allow a player like that to talk down to him, call him soft? Oh, you soft, and you softer. Like, who would do that? Who would take up that? No, basketball players would. And that's why in the NBA, they allow stuff like that to happen. If it happened in the NBA, somebody would have hit him in his mouth. Yep.
Well, but it didn't. But it didn't.
It's obvious. Oh, they're very productive. I'm sure the Timberwolves are more valuable today than they were yesterday. Man, ship that dude out of there. Pack him.
Got to take a break. Coming up, does Baker Mayfield lead the Browns all the way to the playoffs? That's next on First Things First.
Jimmy Butler.